Hello, my name is Jacob Cochran, and I am a career coach at the University of Northwestern. And right now, I'll be going over with you some basic interviewing tips, tricks, and things you should know. We'll get started with how you can prepare. Then we'll talk about what to wear, tips for before, during, and after the interview, and how you should prepare for answering the questions that you'll be asked. Try and give some tips for both virtual and in-person and phone interviews. For all three, the biggest piece of advice that I can give you is that you should be prepared. Be prepared, as Scar would say. And you can do that by checking out the many online resources that we have available to you through the ROC. If you go onto the ROC and then Student Academics, on the right-hand side, there's a career development box, and you can click on helpful online resources. If that's not there, there's so many other resources you can find online to help you prepare. A specific resource that I want to mention is Big Interview. This is a software program that we subscribe to allow UNW students access to prepare for interviews. You can do so much on Big Interview. There's a lot of question sets with how to answer specific questions. It goes over many of the basics as well as advanced questions, and has a curriculum for resumes, negotiation, and what to do in your first 90 days at a job. So there's a lot of helpful information on Big Interview. You can check that out in our helpful online resources, and then you just have to register using your UNW student email. So it's something that we pay for students to have access to. So register on there with your student email, and there's a whole world at your fingertips to help you prepare for interviews. Again, and that's what you should plan on doing, is prepare, prepare, prepare. Prepare for the possible questions that you'll be asked. Consider what the employer is looking for. Practice interviewing by answering questions in front of a mirror, your friend, or at least a camera. And prepare by knowing exactly when and where your interview will be. You can also plan what you will wear and what you will bring to the interview. As far as what to wear to an interview, we encourage you to wear neutral, conservative colors and clothes. Men should wear typically some sort of suit, a tie perhaps. Women, you can wear a skirt or a pantsuit, but we aren't going to recommend too many particulars here. Just the main advice is to dress up and dress conservative and in neutral colors. You can wear some things that show your personality. I know I've previously worn a bow tie to interviews, and I was part of an interview where maybe the tie had a little bit more color or personality to it. Or a woman can wear some jewelry, but nothing too distracting or that will be clanking and kind of loud. Especially keep that in mind for virtual interviews, as the microphone might pick up, your bracelet knocking on the desk, or for men, it might pick up your watch hitting the computer. So just be mindful of what you're wearing, and the more simple you can keep it, probably the better. As far as what to bring for an interview, we recommend bringing a padfolio, so just a nice looking folder with a notebook in it, so you can bring in your resumes and maybe write down any information that you need during the interview or as you meet with people throughout the process. This doesn't really change too much for virtual and phone interviews. We encourage that you still dress up the part. It helps just get you in the right mindset for those interviews. Of course, that's less important for phone interviews. You can wear something comfortable if you want during a phone interview that would just help you be more relaxed and comfortable as you interview. But generally, we encourage getting in that mindset that dressing up helps prepare you for, and virtually especially so, as even if you don't know if they're going to have you be on camera or if it's just going to be a voice one, you want to be prepared to be on camera. Before you even interviews, there's some things that you can do. One is check your social media. Check your social media and make sure that it accurately represents you. Set your social media to private if you haven't done so already. A lot of employers like to see that their possible future employees' social media is private. Just one less thing for them to be concerned about. Otherwise, make sure if you are virtually interviewing to check your tech, make sure that you've got a computer that can handle a virtual interview. Your phone, make sure you've got good reception where you're going to interview. If you're going to be in person, print off a few extra copies of your resume, bring those with. Maybe bring a bottle of water or set up a bottle of water where you're going to be interviewing. Be at least 15 minutes early, and this applies for virtual as well. Just kind of set up everything at least 15 minutes in advance. And if you are in person, make sure that you research the route, especially if you live in the cities. You just never know what traffic is going to be like on any given day. So leave early, give yourself a lot of time, especially if construction has closed down some roads or there's a traffic jam or anything like that. But yeah, set up your area ahead of time if it's a virtual or phone interview. If it's virtual, make sure you've got a plain, simple background, nothing, not a lot of posters or distractions in the background. Give yourself a secluded space where you get good reception or good internet connection so that you have no distractions and that everything will work well. And then check your teeth before starting. And then during an interview, be confident. Make sure that you exude some confidence, and this will be easier if you've prepared for an interview, if you've done some practice. Otherwise, show your personality and your passion. Don't be afraid to do a little bit of small talk if they start. While you're answering questions, try and make eye contact with the interviewer. If there's multiple interviewers, don't just make eye contact with one person, but spread your gaze around to the different interviewers. Sometimes it helps to just make eye contact primarily with the person who asked you the question, and then make sure that you make eye contact at least once while answering each question with everybody else. If you are interviewing virtually, make sure to look into the webcam every once in a while. If you have to put a little post-it note next to it to remind yourself, don't stare at your video of yourself, but try and make that eye contact through the computer. And if you're on the phone, that's obviously less important. So just make sure that there's nobody around you that you're going to make eye contact with that's going to distract you while you're on the phone. And then body language. If you practice, you'll help maintain good body language during an interview. And the main notes there would just be not to be too exaggerated or have too much motion, but keep your movement pretty close to your body. You shouldn't need to extend your elbows at any point. You can move your hands, but make sure that it's complementing what you're talking about so that you aren't just fidgeting or playing with a pen or pencil or something like that. That would be distracting. Don't forget to breathe during an interview. Take some breaths. It's okay. Slow things down. Oftentimes we go too fast when we're interviewing. Be friendly. Like I said, make small talk. It's okay to ask questions once in a while. And then normally there'll be time at the end for you to ask specific questions that you may have. And you definitely should prepare some beforehand. And I'll go over that a little bit later. After the interview, write a thank you note, and if it was virtual or if it was over the phone, you can send that via email. Otherwise, prepare some thank you notes ahead of time and hand those to the secretary or receptionist. It's just a good habit to have, and it will reflect well on you whether you get the position or not. Don't be afraid to follow up. It's okay to maybe ask their timeline for hiring and then follow up based off that timeline. So if they say, yeah, we plan on making a decision within a week, and you don't hear anything within a week, it's okay to give them a call and see what's going on. And I would recommend being confident when you follow up. If you do get a follow-up call, or if you follow up and they let you know that you are not getting hired for the position, depending on your rapport with the person who's calling, or just what you're feeling that the call is like, the tone, it's okay to ask some simple questions of, what are some things that maybe you were lacking on your resume that you could look to add in if you wanted to get a role like that in the future. Also, maybe what are some tips or things that you can improve upon in asking those general questions so that you can do better and improve in the future. Actual questions that will be asked, you can oftentimes Google and find lists based off the occupations or the roles that you're applying to. But just in general, you might be asked some direct informational questions where you'll be asked to recite some information about yourself, like, do you know how to use Microsoft Excel? A lot of times they're yes or no questions. Don't spend a lot of time on them. Technical questions based off your occupation, especially if you're in a more technical profession, so nursing or engineering, they might ask you something specifically about your occupation. But even event planning, they might ask you, have you used, this software, and how would you implement that the team was not used to it, right? So asking you some specific questions based off of the field. Critical thinking questions and situational questions. A lot of times these are hypothetical to see how you problem solve or what your instincts are like, or see your ethics and decision making. So it might be something like, what would you do if you saw a coworker taking money from the cash register? Or, imagine this type of scenario. So those are the types of questions you might see there. And then the most common questions that you may be asked, and ones that you can definitely prepare for, are called behavioral questions. So I'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment, but just in general, all of these questions, how do you answer them? First off, make sure that you do answer the question that they ask. So you can do this by just breathing after they ask you the question. Take a deep breath and make sure you had listened to the question. If you did not hear the question properly, it's okay to ask them to repeat it, but just make sure that you do answer the question they ask. So if they ask you, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Don't start talking about just your strengths and forget your weaknesses, right? So answer the question completely. Or don't start talking about a project that you worked on and then you never get to your strengths and weaknesses. You can help avoid going down any rabbit holes by restating the question. So if they ask you, tell me about a time when you dealt with a difficult customer, you can start by saying, well, a time that I dealt with a difficult customer, ... and then answer the question. So restating the question helps keep you on track. Avoid adding any unnecessary details. So just tell them what they asked. If they only asked you about your strengths, don't go into your weaknesses or things that you could be good at. Just talk about your strengths. Show your passion for the job and the company. One way you can do this is just by avoiding any negative talk about yourself, others, or other experiences that you've had that will reflect poorly on you and can be an indication to the hiring manager that you are going to do the same about that role or that company or that experience. Also, you can help do this by being prepared and knowing more about the organization and the role. So doing some informational interviews beforehand can really help you be prepared to show your passion and enthusiasm for the job, as opposed to coming in and saying, I would like to know a little bit more about this role, or what does your company do? So it's easier to show your passion when you have done your homework. And then rely on your practice. If you rely on your practice, you'll better be able to control your voice, the tone, the volume, and your motions and your body language. And we can also rely on your practice for those difficult behavioral questions by using the STAR method, which I'll go over now. So those behavioral questions can be some of the trickier ones, but are really important to nail. Those questions are the ones that start with, tell me about a time when, or describe a situation, or give me an example of a time. And essentially all of these are trying to get you to go through your actions that you would take and show your soft skills. So are you a good communicator? Do you understand teamwork? Do you understand chain of command and all sorts of things? Are you organized, detail-oriented, etc.? And so you can do this by thinking ahead of time of several different events or situations or stories that you might be able to share to answer some of the more common behavioral questions. And then when you answer, you want to make sure that you describe the situation or event that you were in, and describe the task that you had to complete or that you were dealing with. Take a moment then to describe the actions that you took to complete the task, and then finally, make sure you include the results of your efforts and the result that they can expect from you as a worker. So one of the more common questions you might get is, tell me about a time you had a disagreement with a coworker and how did you resolve it? Think of a time when you had a disagreement. Make sure to give the situation and the task that you were working on without negatively talking about the coworker or the place of work, and then give the action steps that show you know the right actions to take to resolve this type of conflict. Then make sure to include the result. Did you have a better relationship with the coworker? Were you able to meet the needs of the customers, the clients, or what kind of accomplishment or skill did you improve by taking these steps? At the very end of an interview, the interviewer might ask you if you have any questions. It's always good to prepare a couple in advance. Remember, these questions will reflect things about you, so you want to prepare ones that reflect your eagerness for the job and the role, while still reflecting your professionalism and your lifelong kind of attributes. And we usually recommend having at least 2 to ask at the end of an interview. Here's some examples of questions you might ask. You might ask, do you have opportunities for ongoing education and professional development? You might ask, what projects are you and your team excited about right now? You might ask, what on-the-job training do you provide? Or you might ask, what's the culture of your team? These are just examples. You can Google more, but all of them will give you a little bit of insight into the organization that you may be joining. So that way, when they extend an offer to you, you're ready to, you know a little bit more about the culture and the company and how successful you might be in that role. So thank you for listening to this video. If you need to make an appointment with a coach, we encourage you to do that through Handshake. You can download the app or go through our page on the Rock. Otherwise, follow us on Instagram to get job postings and leads at UNW Career Development. And when we're back on campus, stop by our office on the 4th floor of NAS, right outside the elevator. And if you have any questions now, feel free to email us at career@unwsp.edu. We do walk-ins virtually right now, but when we're on campus, Monday through Thursday, 3 to 4:30, and we have all types of career services. So I encourage you to check those out. Make an appointment with a career coach no matter where you're at, and we will help you strategize to be successful. Great. Thank you for joining, and have a great day.